Welcome to Hall and Estates and Succession Planning, a series of podcasts hosted by Ian Hall and Suzana Popovic-Montag. The podcast you are listening to will provide information and insights into estate planning in Canada. From the offices of Hull & Hull in Toronto, here are Ian and Suzana.
Hi, and welcome to Hull and Estates and Succession Planning. You're listening to episode 195 on February 16th, 2010. I'm Ian Hull, and I'm here today without my regular co-host, Suzana Popovic-Montag. She's engaged in matters so that she couldn't podcast this week. I wanted to first start off my podcast by thanking a great author and a friend of mine, Michael Cochran, who is a lawyer here in Toronto and does a substantial amount of his practices in family law. He sent me a complimentary copy, so it makes me want to talk about it, of course, but it's also a great copy of his book called Surviving Your Divorce, A Guide to Canadian Family Law. It's by Michael Cochran, and he's just come out with his 4th edition. So, that's a fantastic resource for family law, understanding basics behind family law. And Mike Cochran is well known for his show that used to be on Business News Network, briefly speaking, but also a great lawyer, and I highly recommend if you need to kind of get basics and some surrounding of divorce law in Ontario, in Canada. The next thing I wanted to talk about was a little pitch into where we're going now with our next mini-series, so to speak. And we're going to start talking about plan giving and the concept of charitable giving, how that, some of the basic concepts and some of the complex elements to charitable giving. One of the areas of charitable giving that is sort of the more buzzword, the more famous, the more well understood is the idea of planned giving. And we're going to, Suzana and I and myself, when Suzana's not here, are going to do a little bit of a mini-series and a fair number of podcasts on planned giving to give some context to this very important element of estate planning. Now, the concept is fairly straightforward, obviously, and that is, of course, how do we charitably give? We've talked about charitable giving in the more global sense, and we've encouraged the Family Conference to use that technique to work through the process as to what charities, if at all, you want to give to, and make sure that you've discussed these things with those who are ultimately going to be affected. There's 2 types of giving, of course. There's that giving during lifetime, and there's giving through your will. And planned giving sort of encapsulates all of that. And I'm going to talk a bit about planned giving today, and we're going to drill down on some of the core concepts of planned giving so that we can really get an understanding of how it can enhance our estate plan. Now, like anything in life, if a good resource is always Wikipedia, and if you want to start at the basics and to start at the beginning, so to speak, I went to Wikipedia and I looked up planned giving. Well, sure enough, planned giving is defined as, from Wikipedia, planned giving is an area of fundraising that refers to several specific gift types that can be funded with cash, equity, or property. These gift vehicles are commonly based on Canadian law or the U.S. and United Kingdom, depending where you are, and other nations are beginning to establish those similar laws. They're gifts that are referred to as such as that require planning or negotiation and counsel rather than just an outright gift. And that's really the big difference here. Obviously, we can gift under our will. It creates tremendous tax advantages, and it's often done. A gift of X $1,000 to your favorite charity is a simple gift, and in its own way planned. But we're going to talk a little bit about the more sophisticated planning that's out there and how it can be useful. And as I say, it ties into the 2 stages: planning during your lifetime, which includes often gifting during your lifetime in a planned way, and then ultimately the plan on your death with respect to the charitable element of your estate plan. So, one other thing before I get into the first topic area I want to discuss, and that is charitable remainder trusts. A little bit of an esoteric area of the law, but one I think that illustrates sort of the core element and the core vehicle to planned giving, or a core element, a core vehicle to planned giving. Before I do that, I just wanted to remind everyone that the 2010 National Charity Law Symposium has been announced by the Canadian Bar Association. This is an annual symposium co-chaired by two fantastic charity-based lawyers, and that are Terrence Carter up at Carter's Professional Corporation up in Orangeville, and Linda Goodell. It's being held in Toronto on April 30th, 2010, and if you're interested in that program, for sure go to the CBAO webpage and you'll see the seminar choices. But it's an interesting one to look at, because when I was preparing with Suzana this mini-series that we were going to discuss, we thought, well, let's see what the experts, so to speak, are saying about the kinds of issues that we want to consider with giving and planned giving, and they, for example, they've talked about unique situations of environmental hazards. So if you're going to gift a property, but then it's touched with environmental issues, how does that work, and how's the recipient charity going to deal with that? Some unique characteristics of that. New and unusual gifts are being dealt with, and really just the nuts and bolts of giving things like cultural property or giving paintings, for example, and so on. So the symposium will be really interesting, and it will be a tremendous, for those who are attending, and Donovan Waters, who is certainly the most renowned and one of the most well-known practitioners and professors of the area of charitable giving, of course, is one of his areas in the estates and trust area of law, and he's speaking as well on the Cypre document, which is something that we'll talk a little bit about in the planned giving element of it, but I just thought that was an interesting symposium and a good one to sort of look at where people are moving forward. The other part of this, before we get into the nuts and bolts, is what are some resources? And we've shown on the podcast the Surviving Your Divorce book that Michael Cochran sent me. And then also in the podcast we're going to list some of the interesting links that exist for planned giving. One of those links is one source that I've used many times, and that is, well, there's a planned giving resources called Planned Giving Resources Consultation and Administration, Marketing and Training, which will be the website will be put on our show notes and on the video. But Planned Giving Today Center is another great resource, and PlannedGiving.com is a really interesting blog and web page for some of the basics of planned giving generally. So today was just to sort of open the dialogue and to consider it, to take it beyond that straightforward gift of X dollars to the charity of my choice, and start to talk about some of the real nuts and bolts of it. And the first area where I thought would be a nice starting point was the concept of charitable remainder trusts. What's a charitable remainder trust? Well, basically, it is charitable gifts made by a trust. And it allows the person to have some real flexibility. It creates an income stream for those who are still alive, so that your close dependents are well looked after with an income stream. But on the death of yourself, or that you can choose the death of anyone, but on your death, the gift could go to the charity. Now, often what will happen with a charitable remainder trust, it will be set up so that your spouse will have income for life, and on his or her death, the capital goes to the charity at that point in time, and some of the creative tools that you can have with that. So that's just one idea of how charitable giving and planned giving is being used. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to have Suzana back next week, but if not, we'll keep working through this idea of charitable remainder trusts to give us some life to the whole concept of planned giving.
You have been listening to Hall on Estates and Succession Planning by Ian Hall and Suzana Popovic-Montag. The podcast that you've been listening to has been provided as an information service. It is a summary of current issues in estates and estate planning. It is not legal advice, and you're reminded to always speak with a legal professional regarding your specific circumstance. To listen to other Hull & Hall podcasts or leave any questions or comments, please visit our website at hullestatemediation.com.